Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate
if you
that.
like, I can jump now into the webinar logistics real quick.
Fantastic. Sounds good. Thanks.
Great. Welcome everyone to the August 18th, 2025 Interagency Transportation Equity Advisory Subcommittee meeting on community engagement policies and practices. This subcommittee's focus will be on elevating diverse and historically marginalized voices and will advise the California Transportation Commission, California State Transportation Agency, and California Department of Transportation on how to achieve meaningful outcomes in transportation equity, environmental justice, and equitable economic opportunities, especially as related to transportation planning and programming. The meeting agenda is located on the Commission's website at www.catc.ca.gov. Any document created for this committee can be translated into any language you need. Simply email us at transportationeac@dot.ca.gov. We will have them returned to you as quickly as possible. American Sign Language translation is being provided for this meeting. You should see them on your screen. Live closed captioning is also available. Please select the Show Captions tab at the bottom of your screen. There are a number of language options available there to choose from. Speakers, for accessibility purposes, we ask you please state your name before speaking. Presenters, if you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating services adequate time for accurate translations. Members of the public, we welcome comments from the public as a part of each item at this meeting. You should see the webinar control panel, likely located on the bottom of your screen. There you'll find the raise hand and Q&A tabs. We encourage you to use the raise hand feature as soon as we reach the item to give the system time to acknowledge you, and then committee staff will let you know when it's your turn to make your comment. Alternately, you may use the Q&A tab to submit your comment. Committee staff will read that comment on your behalf. Do your best to be concise, and we ask that you make your point in 3 minutes or less. If, for some reason, we have many speakers on any single topic, we reserve the right to limit comments to 1 minute if needed. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate that. I'll go ahead and move us along to the land acknowledgement, which I'd be happy to share. We acknowledge that the land that we now call California is the ancestral lands of over 109 nations, tribes, and peoples. The indigenous peoples of this area have a deep reciprocal relationship with the land as its original stewards. Their ways, methods, and traditions have contributed to California's rich biodiversity and have impacted the transportation network for the state. We stand with Indigenous communities and are committed to partnering and advocating for a more equitable and sustainable future. A transportation network not only connects us to families, friends, work, and leisure, it connects us to our past and our future. We embrace our past with a future commitment to inclusiveness and equity for everyone who calls this state home. Thank you. I'll go ahead and move to public comment of non-agenda items. Do we have any public comment on non-agenda items?
Chair, I'm not seeing any request to comment at this time.
Okay. Seeing none, happy to move along to the next item, which is adoption of the June meeting minutes. Is anyone willing to make a motion to adopt the meetings, the minutes from our most recent meeting?
Mr. Rousey, I make a motion to adopt the minutes from our last meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member
Andres, I'll
Rousey.
second that.
Okay, thanks, Member Ramirez. Appreciate that. So we got a motion from Member Rousey and a second from Member Ramirez. I'll call the vote.
All right, thank you. I will call the roll.
Okay.
Carrie Akimi Hernandez. Lisa Marie Alvarado. Abmael Chavez Hernandez.
Aye.
Ana Gonzalez. Andres Ramirez,
Aye.
Michelle Rousey,
Aye.
Hualani Vasquez,
Aye.
Chair Torres Van Vleck.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, excited to jump into our next item. Moving on to agenda item 5, which is the Caltrans statewide engagement playbook presentation and discussion presented by Sarah Rosen from the Advancing Community Engagement Office. So go ahead and pass it to Sarah for their presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks for having me here today. Okay, let's see if I can share. Perfect, thanks. So today we're talking about the statewide community engagement playbook, follow up from our last meeting with you all. So I wanted to go over an overview of this project as well as what we chatted about briefly in our June meeting, and then wanted to spend the bulk of our time today getting into the document, chapter 4 specifically, that was sent out about a week ago, and then talk about next steps.
Sarah, we can see your notes. Do you want to put it in display mode?
Oh. Thanks. So just a reminder of what we are working on is that recognizing that every function has been doing their part of engagement, but how do we work a little bit better internally for a better process when we're engaging with all of our externals, including partners, tribes, community groups, the general public. And so that's really what we're trying to work on, is that better internal coordination for better outcomes of our projects. And so what we're talking about today is the statewide playbook, but that's kind of just one tool in our toolbox. We are also working on hopefully having a director's policy that really sets the foundation of engagement at Caltrans. And then the statewide playbook really talks about how all these processes and tools work together. And then hopefully districts will one day have district playbooks that can really fill in those district specific processes for engagement, and really pushing developing public engagement plans that are really project specific, and utilizing our new Caltrans engagement portal to help facilitate and document and track that engagement. And also in our engagement toolbox is that we've developed the public engagement plan template and guide that helps us internally coordinate and right-size the engagement for our plans and projects. We also have the Caltrans engagement portal, which I just mentioned, and our district community engagement coordinators meet regularly for roundtable discussions and do get focused training on engagement. And we've also developed an equitable engagement toolbox, which is an online suite of resources, from local resources to federal and state resources on conducting equitable engagement. And we have also developed an on-demand training modules for how to conduct engagement equitably at Caltrans. But so today we're really talking about this playbook, which is an effort led on a headquarters level, talking about roles and responsibilities, best practices for that internal continuity from planning through project delivery, and talks about all the tools that we have at Caltrans, different methods and platforms for engaging, equity considerations and considerations of different groups require different types of engagement, and how do we build better working relationships for our plans and projects for more continuous, robust engagement. So just to kind of recap where we've been is that we started with an internal committee of folks across the department, subject matter experts, really trying to get that input from different subject matter experts of what would be useful for Caltrans staff when they're conducting engagement, what would be useful in this toolkit. And then we also had listening sessions across the state in each district of better understanding what districts needed and what they would think would be helpful for this playbook. And then we had a statewide internal review where we circulated the kind of working document and solicited comments from staff and received over 400 comments that helped improve the document. And so we hope to release internally a working version of this playbook in November. These dates are some things have been pushed back, so I would say this is more like a December, January date here instead of November. And then we're also trying to improve the document with external input. So from those of you here, the subcommittee working with you hand in hand to gather input, but we also intend to do an external survey, again, probably more like January, to targeted stakeholder groups to really improve mostly chapter 4 of this guidance. And so with all this helpful input, we hope to release a final document in the spring of next year. So how your input will be used is that we are focused on chapter 4. This is the chapter that has the most opportunity for benefit for your input to help guide Caltrans staff of how they can engage with different communities. And your input that we receive may also affect other aspects of the document if it makes sense. And it could also affect our other guidance tools that I had mentioned before. So if we receive some input from you that doesn't quite fit in the playbook, it could still help be beneficial for our other tools. So just to kind of recap, the whole playbook has several chapters, and the one that we're really focused on today is this chapter 4, how we work together, how we work with our externals. And we met in June and we had a good discussion where we brainstormed and gathered input for what will be useful in the final document. So the chapters 1 and 4 that were shared with you via email do not have the input that we received in June. All of the input from June and that we received from you today in our comment form will be reflected in that spring version. So just wanted to let you know that we do intend to incorporate that input, but you're not seeing it in this version that you received yet. So what did we talk about in June? We talked about different groups that we should be reaching when we're engaging on our plans and projects. Some of the groups are listed here, you know, artist groups, youth groups, senior groups, local neighborhood organizations. We also talked about, you know, what should we know and be aware of before we begin engaging. And we also talked about, you know, offering training, never being extractive, and also speaking multiple languages, just some to name a few here. Also, you know, reporting back to the community of how input was used or not used, and keeping folks informed throughout the process, just to name a few. And then we also talked about methods and platforms. So we talked about maybe incentivizing folks to be engaged, different types of tools for engagement. And then we also touched on some positive experiences, some great things happening in District 11. So didn't want to spend too much time on recapping the June discussion, but did want to open it up for any comments about maybe anything that I possibly missed or any thoughts or questions that you may have so far before we really dive into chapter 4. Kulani?
Yes, hi. Thank you, Sarah. So I really think that when we look at this this community engagement piece, that it needs to be more of a check of a box, right? It needs to be an ongoing process. I think a lot of times when we start to do this in community engagement and we look at it as just a checkbox, we question ourselves when only 15, 20 people show up at our event, and we wonder why. And I think if we look at it more as this ongoing piece that needs to be implemented in our transportation safety as part of that safe systems approach, that we continually look at educating our community, that it will be this ever increasing kind of piece that the community is aware of, that, education takes place at this time, at this place, every quarter or whatever it may be, but like this ongoing kind of education that happens.
Thank you, Lualani. Yeah, this is definitely something that we would like to spend more time on, of just more resources about the planning and project delivery process to make it easier for folks to jump in and understand where they are in the process and how that input is used. So definitely appreciate your input. Michelle?
I agree with the last speaker. I'd also like to actively see that when we use terminology around seniors, we also add the word disabilities, people with disabilities, so that we encourage that reference, so that people with disabilities aren't excluded. But I do think a lot. Earlier this year, I worked on some of the capital projects and looked at equity and some of the questions that were asked, that so that different groups could get funding, and the outreach that they did to different populations that would be affected by the project. And I think that's there were some of them that really did a really over the top job on reaching out to the communities and seniors and people with disabilities, just an overall outreach to the community that will have a huge impact going forward. And I think if nothing else in these tools, that we can encourage that and a robust outreach in everything that Caltrans does that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, thanks for flagging the intersectionality of these different groups. That's a really important concept to address. And yeah, our hope is that we will be really right-sizing the engagement for our projects using those public engagement plans, so we can ensure that the folks that are affected by the project are included in those discussions, or at the very least informed about what's happening. That is our hope. But yeah, it's definitely taking time to build out this program and not just do really good engagement on a few projects, but do it thoughtfully for all of our plans and projects. Will definitely take time, but yeah, thank you for your input. Any other thoughts that anyone wanted to flag about our last discussion, or any questions you had about the presentation? Okay, great. So you all should have received a copy of the various chapters of the statewide playbook, chapter 1 and 4. So if you didn't, please let us know so we can share that with you, but you should have received it. Instead of giving you all whiplash scrolling through the document, I just kind of wanted to touch on what chapter 4 is like for those of you who maybe haven't had a chance to read through it yet. So chapter 4 is really, and also please keep in mind the comments that you made in our last meeting in June, and kind of thinking through what else you maybe want to elaborate on now that you're actually seeing what is in chapter 4. So we're talking about recommended strategies and best practices for building working relationships, understanding that different groups require different tailored engagement. And we're talking about, when we're discussing our engagement, working with our internal Caltrans team, working with our partners, tribes, and kind of moving out from there. So the internal Caltrans team is really that internal collaboration to ensure that our message is consistent, and we're really trying to reduce stakeholder confusion or fatigue by really having a better discussions internally. And then we are moving into our partners, so our transportation partners. That helps us leverage resources, leverage knowledge, and also help reduce community fatigue and improving our project outcomes. And then we were talking about California Native American tribes, establishing and adhering to those government to government relations for meaningful engagement and respecting tribal sovereignty. Also, in the first section of this chapter, we are addressing the media and elected officials, that effective communication with the media and elected officials is really imperative for advancing discussions with local communities and also ensuring that consistent messaging. We also are recognizing community-based organizations that partnering with CBOs can help reach underserved communities and help establish networks and get that local expertise. Historic preservation, environmental interest groups, and these folks are really helpful for cultural and environmental considerations in planning and through project delivery. Title VI, that non-discrimination and ensuring meaningful participation during the project delivery process. Chapter 4 also addresses ABA of ensuring information and meetings are accessible, and just considerations for ensuring that all folks can be a part of these discussions. Limited English proficiency is addressing those interpretation and translation needs. We also have a small section on equity considerations of addressing equitable access and participation, and also touching on different tools that are useful to help identify equity priority communities. And then we have oh, go ahead, Michelle.
I didn't really want to interrupt, but last year when I first came on the EAC, there were focus groups, and I'm not sure if it was with CAPSI or with Caltrans, that I participated with focus groups about outreach and to different communities and things. And I'm wondering if you might be able to ask staff if they have access to some of that finding to help with this process here too. It was they had the outreach that they did to have those focus groups was incredible, and I'm just wondering if it would be useful for this group or for you guys to be able to get access to that, and so that you're not having to like repeat a whole bunch when that information might, or at least some of it might already be out there for you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll have to look into seeing if we can get a copy of that and kind of compare it to what might be helpful for this playbook. Andres?
Oh, let me read it. Sorry. 2 questions. On the media piece, is the idea for like I don't know, like news media, or does that include like social media platforms? Just just because, you know, nowadays that's definitely a key way to engage people, and it should definitely be something that needs to be taken into account, right? Not solely, but definitely should be a tool. And then the other piece that I did want to bring up, I do think it's important that we talk about accessibility for folks. Especially during these times when folks don't always feel safe being out. Especially the communities that we're targeting to be engaged in a lot of these conversations. So I think that's something that Caltrans should definitely take into consideration, right? Whether that means, you know, having hybrid options when doing engagement activities, or, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think it's something to think about. I know we're doing that as we're doing our community engagement with my organization. Understanding that, you know what I'm saying, like, people kind of are really fearful right now, and I feel like that's not going to really change over the course of the next few years, right? And we should be prepared for those scenarios, and how to make sure folks feel safe and welcomed, and, you know, not fearful they're going to be targeted coming out of a building or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Thank you, Andres. And that's a really good point about thinking of accessibility in that terms, not in the ADA aspect, but of, yeah, safety and thinking of government spaces. I think, yeah, that's definitely something we can touch on in the equity section a little bit more. And yeah, I think the media section could be more specific, talking about social media, because these are totally different platforms. Thank you. Oh, Michelle.
Yeah, no, I actually, thank you for last speaker. I was thinking about, you know, the digital aspect, and that there's still, quite a bit of a digital divide with our elders, and that we just, in anything that we do, although I really do encourage, online and other aspects for media, I just don't want to leave out our seniors who are still kind of, you know, if they don't see it on a flyer or something else, that we remember that, you know, there are still some seniors that just have no other resource but to get it at their local store, at their senior center, or other aspect, and it's on a flyer some way that they can read it and take it with them. And they don't always have that online presence, but maybe that we could refer to a commercial on local access or something like that as a resource to be able to do outreach to that population. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, that's a really good point about the digital divide and seniors, rural communities. Yeah, I was hoping to kind of take your notes. I was just wanting to walk through what chapter 4 was for those who haven't read it yet. And then I was going to kind of just, Cassidy was going to help me share screen and kind of take notes of what we should add to these sections. So let me just kind of get through these, and then we can really get into the discussion. I'll try to go quickly, but also I'm not sure. So maybe you all could raise your hand and tell me how many have read this, or if this is helpful for me to walk through. Got one.
If I could
Okay, go ahead.
just share some insight, Sarah, for those that would like to have see the chapter, you can, there's an email that Camille sent on August 8th, and the document is attached there. So if you wanted to pull that up, that is helpful. I was just looking through that. So just wanted to bump that up for folks that wanted to also scroll through that and read that through the discussion. So it's August 8th email from Camille.
Can somebody just re-email it? That would be helpful, so I'm not having to search for it during the meeting.
I could forward it to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Randy. Okay, well then I'll just quickly continue here, and yeah, you could also pull it up on your end too. If I know people are different visual and hearing how they take in information. And then chapter 4 also gets into the variety of engagement methods. We're talking about virtual community engagement, in person, hybrid, and really ensuring that we're taking a comprehensive approach to inclusive engagement. So we talk about virtual engagement, and we are talking about different tools we could leverage, and also recognizing, limitations to virtual engagement. And then also we talk about in-person events, scheduling these at convenient times for community to help for better participation numbers. And we are also talking about tools like community walk assessments for, looking at transportation needs in a community. And also hybrid methods, combining these methods for maximum engagement, reaching more folks. Leveraged engagement, how do we better go to where the community is instead of asking folks to come to us, and how we can gather information and make this as easy as possible, reduce burdens for folks to participate. So that is kind of chapter 4 in a nutshell. I'm going to hand it over to Cassidy to kind of just share her screen of us note taking of what we should be adding. So I think the chat was disabled. We're trying to avoid using the chat due to the accessibility issues. And then also, as Randy mentioned, you might want to open the PDF if you have another screen, if that's helpful for you. So yeah, I'll stop sharing and I'll pass it over to Cassidy. How do I stop this?
Yeah, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, thanks, Cassidy.
Great.
So I think we did have a couple things earlier about equity considerations and safety. And we also talked about social media under the media section.
Cassidy, would you be able to zoom
Thanks, Cassidy.
into your screen a little bit more?
Sure.
I see you had taken some extra
There we
notes.
go.
Okay, no problem. We could add those later.
Yeah,
So maybe
I
we
can
can,
move
thank
this
you
one
so
up.
much. Maybe we could just kind of look at that outline, and anyone can just raise your hand about maybe thinking back to our discussion that we had in June. And also, since we've kind of run through the chapter, is there anything missing here that really, should be an important group that we're touching on and addressing, or different platforms we should be considering, or also just other things that Caltrans staff should be aware of when we are engaging with folks? Oh, go ahead, Randy.
Sure, yeah. Thinking about events, one of the examples that I mentioned at the previous meeting that did a little bit more thinking on was Caltrans District 11 has organized like 2 open freeway events in the last few years where they utilized Clean California dollars to close a freeway, make a repair, and then they basically did like a Ciclavia or a Ciclos Dias event where they let people ride bikes, skateboard, walk. They organized, they involve artists, music as well. They had a fashion show on one of the freeways, like a community organized fashion show last year. Those have been some of the most effective community engagement events. They also tied it into an ongoing community planning effort with the reconnecting communities. I think it'd be great to highlight that in the events section. I'm going through the document now. I don't see that event reference, but there was a little discussion at our meeting last week in San Diego. Thanks to all those that came down during the EAC tour. And one of the ideas was, we wanted to encourage other districts to do those events, because they're really effective, and they really leverage like an asset that Caltrans has, which is right of way, right? Caltrans has tons of freeway right of way going through all over the place, dividing communities, as we know, and so there's an opportunity to repurpose that temporarily and then have a fun community engagement event. So I love to see the district try to commit to a goal of doing one of those events per year and making that like a signature community engagement opportunity. So I wanted to, share that feedback as a recommendation, or open streets events that are tied to community engagement, planning conversations, and setting a goal of one per year per district if we can.
Thanks, Randy. Yeah, I really appreciate you highlighting that. I think, we are thinking about these funding sources and then they dry up and we're like, well, we can't really we can't share about this because people can't really duplicate it. But I think there is value in not losing this information. And if other similar funding sources become available, it's something that people can look at and say, hey, a District 11 already did something like this, like it's possible, it's feasible, and seeing it documented somewhere. So yeah, thanks for highlighting that. I think it's always tricky, thinking about the funding, but we definitely don't want to lose these really great examples. And just because funding is cyclical thing, money does come back around. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I went to a transportation event at CIL in Berkeley. I don't know if it was earlier this year or late last year, but they were the community engagement that was done. There had to be like 50 or 60 people there from the community, and they had posters up about some of the proposed changes and things like that. Although I do like the big party, that's wonderful with some of that. But I also think the smaller groups in engagement of the community in spaces that are not only accessible, but just bring the community together so that they have a say in what some of the projects are, and in a way that is accessible to them.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that great work that's happening in District 4. Do you know who was leading that event by chance?
I don't, and I'm sorry, I don't. I'm engaged at all levels, a lot. I don't. I just know it was done at the Ed Roberts Center, and like I said, I'm not sure if it was earlier this year or late last year. I just know, and I don't know if it was local city or was Caltrans. So, I don't recall exactly. I'm sorry.
No problem. We can see if we can find any information about that one. Always good to have these case studies to share.
Yeah, I think it's beyond that. I mean, it's just the community centers, the local libraries, just different places where people can gather. I mean, even if you were to have it like in front of City Hall or some place like that in different cities where there's an open space and you can have a mic and engage people in open dialogue is more to why I brought it up. I think that brings it allows space for them to speak and have input and let them know what's going on. So I mean, because I'm on different committees, I get a lot of this stuff duplicated in a couple of my committees. So I have a huge ahead of a lot of people of knowing what projects are coming to our cities and different aspects of paratransit and other things. So I just I know that isn't available to everybody else. I mean, you know, there are outreach and things like that that are done, but I just think we need to meet people where they are, and you know, having the events at places where people gather and can gather is important.
Thanks, Michelle. That's a good point. Engagement outside of our plans and projects, just, you know, rapport building and just general trust building. Thank you. Go ahead, Andres.
Thank you for Michelle. I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying, right? Meeting people where that's important. The other thing I would say that I would want to add is understanding that, and it goes to meeting people where they're at, understanding that people don't necessarily understand, you know, the language of transportation or planning, right? In terms of amenities that they may be considering. So visuals can be or hands-on activities I think are important in doing this, right? I know, for example, SCAG through their Go Human program has a kit of parts in which, you know, they're able to, you know, pop up like a temporary bike lane, for example, so people can have a visual how the road organization would look, helping with the engagement aspect. I know the city of LA had the Great Streets program in which, you know, groups are able to organize pop-up like demonstrations of potential what's it called, facilities for different streets, right? How improvements, so people could engage with them and see firsthand what a curb extension would look like, or, you know, an improved crosswalk, for example, things like that, right? You know, because most people could tell you, I know what that is, but it's hard to visualize, right? And I think that's super helpful for people to engage when they're able to see it, even if it's in a temporary basis, or even to able. I mean, we've done charrettes where we just do like a model where they could kind of play with you know, blocks to see the reorganization of the streets or how things can look like. It's just there's different ways to be creative, but I think the hands-on aspect of it is important. To go with whatever data that may be presented. 'Cause I think data is important, absolutely, but I think, you know, when engaging with community, back to Michelle's point, right? In terms of reaching people where they're at, is understanding that like they could engage with the activities, they just don't, they lack the language sometimes to really understand what's going on.
Thanks, Andres. Yeah, I like the idea of, like, when we think of these kind of pop-ups or you know, temporary demonstrations of what these things look like. It could be something, you know, large scale, but it could also be something small scale that, you know, we could set up anywhere. And I like thinking of it in that aspect. Like, you could go all out, or it could be simple. And I really appreciate you framing it like that for me. Other thoughts of things that would be helpful for Caltrans staff to know, maybe groups that we could have been missing in chapter 4 that should be touched on, or groups that maybe are not discussed enough, or also into the platforms and methods that we've been kind of chatting about now. Go ahead, Carrie, Cami Hernandez.
Hey, good morning. Thank you all. I think one area that we might be able to highlight is some of the efforts that are happening and within the Indigenous community, specifically the dam removal, the Klamath Dam removal. That's a historic event where that's the first ever project to remove the dam and restore it, and seeing how there's partnerships with community, but also just seeing like different things that are happening within the Indigenous communities. Land back efforts, what does that mean exactly? Because it doesn't necessarily specifically just mean land being held with Indigenous or returning into the Indigenous nation. It's the stewardship and protection of natural resources. It's, helping with climate change efforts. But another area that comes to mind is also when we have like Indigenous officials from other states coming in to have a way to acknowledge them in a formal way, whether it's a declaration to thank them for being in our community and, we value them, or, a blanket ceremony, or some way that we can show that, even to the point of District 11. I wasn't there for the ribbon cutting, but when we have international relations, there was a ribbon cutting for the partnership between Mexico and San Diego. So just those are thoughts that come to mind as well.
Thank you, Carrie. And I know when we do our external survey, we do have a kind of more separate tribal survey. And I've been working with our internal tribal groups, so those in our office, but there's also folks in the Division of Environmental Analysis. And we were going to maybe share it with a couple tribal members to kind of get their feedback and make sure the survey was getting the answers that was asking the right questions to get the answers that we're hoping to get. I'm not sure how like the EAC works, but if we're able to share the draft survey with you, that would be if you'd be interested in being a part of that. And I don't know if I'm allowed to ask that right now. Maybe I don't know the process.
I would say I would be interested if it is in alignment and doesn't have any conflict of interest, but also I highly recommend, because when I say Indigenous, it's so that it's inclusive to our local and global Indigenous sovereign nations, but there are over 200 tribes represented in the state, so I don't know how the community outreach is, if you're reaching out to every tribal community or if it's more diluted, but I would recommend more is better, and earlier on is also better for collaboration and meaningful impact.
Thanks, Carrie. And yeah, maybe I'll check with Carolyn and see the process for that after this meeting.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead, Randy.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to lift up a couple things. Well, first, thank you so much, Member Kemi Hernandez, for sharing that. I love that idea, and I wanted to second that. Going through the document, I think it'd be good to be clear that, and I'm assuming that this is a goal. If not, I think it'd be good to make it explicit that one of the goals really should be to create meaningful community engagement opportunities for historically excluded communities that have been cut out of the process of decision making. I think that would be a good goal, to be clear, that we want to achieve meaningful engagement. I'm going through the document, perhaps it's in another chapter, but I didn't see much about like what does that sequence for engagement look like? What does that ongoing engagement look like? I've seen times where the engagement, the ask of the agency is kind of late after some of the big decisions have been made, right? Like for example, I mentioned last time a freeway expansion that was planned here in 2011 through 15, and Caltrans internally narrow 26 alternatives down to two, and the two alternatives were both harmful to the impacted community. So there was no engagement, in that process of going from 26 alternatives to two, and it led to a lot of honestly wasted resource because the agency spent millions of dollars analyzing these two alternatives that the community opposed, and we actually got the political support for another direction, which was a transit first direction. So the sequence is just completely out of just it was poorly planned really, and there was a missed opportunity to engage community in the decision making. So being mindful of when we go to the community, making sure that it's early enough to actually be able to influence key milestones in the planning process. I think that's critical.
Thanks, Randy. Yeah, that is addressed in chapter 3. We didn't share this chapter because it's very entrenched in Caltrans processes that are a lot of it is not open to change. But yes, our hope is maybe I could just, I don't want to derail you, Cassidy, but if I could just share this project delivery cycle real quick.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So what we're really I think what you're describing is maybe something that was happening, possibly PAED. That's probably likely. But what we do identify is that planning is where the most opportunity for input is, for community input. This is community visioning. This is what do we want this specific transportation project to look like, or transportation asset to look like. And then, this is long-term visioning. It's very large scale at Caltrans. Think like, corridor plans, even statewide plans. And then, needs are identified, and the PID, which is like kind of the birth of a project, is the most opportunity for change, because this is where we're scoping what this project is. And of course, there are funding limitations, but this is the most opportunity for change, and this is where we are identifying that public engagement plans need to be created and begin being implemented, and in the hope that we are including folks early, so actual input can shape a project. Because as we move along, the opportunity for input to affect the scope of a project becomes more fixed, as you have mentioned, Randy, and could be too late. So our hope is obviously to get the most input during plans, but also for specific projects at the beginning of the project, and the project initiation document phase. So this is touched on a lot in chapter 3. It is pretty much what chapter 3 is about, is developing that public engagement plan and really seeing it through the life of the project. But in terms of opportunity for change, and also the technical aspect of chapter 3, it's didn't want to confuse folks, and also wanted to get your input on what would be most beneficial. But any input that we do receive could also affect other chapters if it makes sense. So still appreciate your input on this. And hopefully this helps clarify, or hopefully I didn't make it more confusing.
No, that's good to know that this is covered in chapter 3. Thanks for sharing that. Appreciate it.
Okay, sorry, Cassie, you can take back over. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Nyla, I didn't see you there.
No, I've been a participant listening in, and I just got elevated to panelist because Randy, I hope I'm not derailing, but I kind of want to ask Randy a follow-up question. Is that going to derail us?
No, please go for it.
So Randy, I really appreciate your last comments, especially just around meaningful engagement. And not to put you on the spot, like as you give more feedback, and this is for everybody too, please think about it. But like helping us figure out how we more specifically define what meaningful engagement is, like, and because I think depending on who's reading this, depending on what folks are thinking, meaningful engagement can mean a lot of things. And so I think as explicit as we can dial down, like, and dare I even say, like, this is what Caltrans's definition of meaningful engagement is. Like, what does that look like? How early, how often, the ability to impact. Like, we also need help defining that language and expanding our vocabulary as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Like, as simple as possible, like as deep as we can go in defining meaningful engagement would be helpful as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for that question. When I worked at City Heights CDC, we spent some time defining the terms that we use a lot. And I just pulled up the document, and this is from 2018, so we'd probably update it a bit today. And I could share in the chat, but for accessibility reasons, if I can read it, if that's okay, it's just 2 sentences, but I'm not saying this is the end all be all of the term, but this is how we defined it 2018. Meaningful community engagement requires involving and empowering community members in all activities, from identifying the relevant issues and making decisions about how to address them to evaluating and sharing the results with the community. True engagement provides a process for input provided by the community to actually influence decisions. That includes a feedback loop. And then we reference the spectrum of community engagement that a lot of folks are probably familiar with, which is, inform on the far left, which is the lower level of public engagement, to consult, to involve being kind of like mid-level public engagement, collaborate, and then empower being like the highest level of public engagement. So yeah, again, that was from 2018, but happy to share that, and thank you, Naila. I'll like take that with me and continue thinking about like how can we define it in this document. Appreciate that question.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I like that idea of making sure that we define it, because when we want agencies to look at specifically underserved communities or a certain population, then we need to be specific in our language and make sure that that is in our language in this aspect, so that they understand exactly what we're looking for and what we want from them when they get their projects and they start doing their community engagement.
It's a really good point. Thank you, Michelle. Other thoughts of Naila's question about meaningful engagement, or other thoughts you may have about additions to chapter 4 for Caltrans staff? Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, so when I worked on the projects earlier this year, there was like 4 or 5 questions that were asked of me specifically to look at whether the project looked at underserved communities, and although I thought the questions were really robust, I think there were all different scales of what came back to me through the different projects of what they thought was expected of them. So that's why I'm saying I think we need to be specific. If we want a certain amount of engagement from start to finish, then we need to tell them that, and so that we expect that from them.
I'm sorry, I missed the second part there. I couldn't, could you say that again?
So that we, you know, we ask specific questions from start to finish, and we have that expectation from them throughout. So if we want something midpoint in the middle or wherever, so that they do that engagement. Sorry, my phone's ringing. So that you have that. So thank you. Sorry guys, I gotta get this.
Thanks, Michelle. Other thoughts on chapter 4 as maybe you've been skimming it? Any groups that we could be missing here that should be here? Or methods of engagement that should be highlighted? I know there's a lot of different types of engagement tools. And we have a lot of references elsewhere, but some major platforms that we should be considering, or just things that Caltrans staff should know when they're picking up this playbook, and something that they should really be reading. Okay, well, if there's no other comments, I can show you how you can provide additional comments after this meeting. I know this was, oh, go ahead, Michelle.
Sorry, I just noticed that you have ADA up there on one of your things here. Just want people to be aware that a lot of changes are happening at our federal government level that is diminishing some of our protections under ADA and then their own spread, which affects not only ADA, but instead affects community living, transportation, housing, things like this. And just want people to be aware that it will impact on how we are expected to deal with people with disabilities and their seniors going forward if they take away some of these protections, and how we react to it as a group and as an agency. It is important that we still look at that population, whether it's on the books or not federally. So,
Thank you, Michelle. Any other final thoughts about chapter 4? Okay, yeah, so I know this was kind of the first time many of you were seeing it. So hopefully this was helpful kind of walking through it together. And we will have a couple weeks for you all to provide comments, additional comments that you may have. Let me share my screen. I have a comment form that we'll share after this meeting. It takes you to the Smartsheet website, and you can just fill in your name, email address, and then so you should have received the document. And if you could just select maybe what page, that if there's a specific comment about the content that's listed, or if you just have a general comment, you can fill in general comment. It could be about one of the subheadings or just a general comment. And then if you have more comments, you can select yes, and the more boxes will pop up. There is a limit to 10 boxes. So if you have more than 10 comments, just submit another form. And then also, while we're kind of working through our external survey, we are interested in your feedback on maybe any statewide organizations that should be receiving our survey. So if you have some suggestions, please list the name of the organization here, and we can see if it makes sense. We're really looking for, statewide organizations. As I mentioned before, we will have district playbooks, and if they're more of a kind of local organization, they may be better suited to receive the survey for their district playbooks, because we are trying to provide general guidance to staff statewide. So this is why we're looking for statewide groups, statewide advocacy groups. So please fill those in here as well, because we hope to get our survey out to the folks that will really help this document, improve this document. Any questions about the survey? Go ahead, Michelle.
I'm wondering if you could reach out to the state ILs, which are the independent living centers. And they have not only local independent living centers, but they have a statewide group that is over them. And they might be able to get some feedback on this from our seniors and people with disabilities agency. That might help you, and they may even have something that they can share with you.
What group was that? I'm sorry. I don't know if it's just me. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
It's probably my tablet. I'm sorry, guys. I was talking about the independent living centers. There's local ILs, which is independent living centers, like a CIL in Berkeley or Krill in Hayward, but there's an agency over them. And we could send it to my chairs of my DACWAT committee. Although I run the transportation sub, they're over transportation, and long-term supports and services and transportation. But they might have a playbook of their own that, as far as community engagement, that they might have or may even be able to share with you, that might be able to help you with that population too, on how to engage that community.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, well, we can take a note, independent living centers. Thank you. Other questions about the form? So yeah, I do have a due date on here for the 1st of September. So a couple weeks to review the document and provide any comments you may have. And even if you don't have any comments, if you do have some groups that you'd like to recommend to receive our external survey, you can just submit that as well. And then now just to kind of recap where we're at. Oh, I see this keeps doing this. So we completed our mural discussion, and then now we're doing the discussion and comment form. And then, so I know this says November, but I think we're kind of looking at January now to be sending out these surveys. So I do have kind of a list of our preliminary folks that we plan to send it to. We do intend to send it to our transportation partners, and we have some Caltrans internal advisory groups, kind of like this one. But in terms of our advocacy groups, we have Climate Plan, AARP, NRDC, CalBike, CalWalk, Clean Air Coalition, Greenlining, Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability, California Environmental Justice Alliance, Next Gen Policy, Disability Rights California, California Council of the Blind. And then, so those are the advocacy groups we've kind of identified so far. So yeah, please let us know on that survey form if there's any that should be engaged. And we'll also, in addition to the survey, be kind of sharing an executive summary to these folks. So the intent of the survey is really to gather information that we can then synthesize and add to the statewide playbook. But we do want to, let folks know what this effort is all about. So we are working on an executive summary to kind of help capture what this effort is in a very brief 1 to 2 pager. And then we'll also be kind of holding a couple informational briefings where we will just share with folks again what this effort is about, recognizing that people receive information differently. So wanting to be transparent about what this effort is about. So hence the executive summary and the informational briefings. And then, sending that survey out. Any questions? Okay, so the next steps are that our comment form is going to close on September 1st, and then looking to send those surveys probably in January. And we do want to report back to the full EAC about what we have been working on as a group. So I'll be working with Carolyn and her team about the best time to do that in relation to these change dates now. And then spring, we hope to share the final document and show how all your input and our survey input really helped improve the document for the better for Caltrans staff. So any final questions before I hand it back over to Randy? Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks to the team who's been leading the effort. Really appreciate you. And it is a big moment that I know a lot of our EC members and staff here today have been working towards to create, a different kind of relationship that we've historically had between our communities and Caltrans, so that we can work together meaningfully to advance shared goals for the state. So I appreciate you sharing that, and thanks for the clarity about all the next steps. So just to recap, the comment form closes September 1st. Surveys will be going out. Share the list of folks that you would like to receive the survey, and they'll receive a special email from the Caltrans staff to respond to the document. All right, so move on to our last item, was wrap up and next steps. So we the next meeting of the EAC, there's, as you know, we have 3 subcommittees. The data implementation subcommittee is meeting tomorrow, August 19th. The agenda is in the email that Justin sent on August 8th. Then on August 25th, the Transportation Planning and Program Guidance Subcommittee is meeting. Also in that meeting that Justin sent on August 8th, you can find more info about that. And then on September 5th, we will just convene as a committee, and then October 15th as well, and December 3rd. So we've got some upcoming meetings. Is there anything I missed, staff, on the next steps?
No, that was a great summary. Thank you for that. We'll also have our next round of subcommittee meetings in November, so keep an eye out for that.
Okay. Anything else, Camille, for wrapping up today's meeting you wanted to share?
I think that's everything. Thank you so much, Randy, for doing a great job chairing, and thank you to Sarah and the ACE team for that informative presentation, and to all the subcommittee members in attendance. Before we finish up, Carolyn, is there anything?
Nope, nothing on my end. Thank you, Camille. Thank you, Randy.
Okay, do I need a motion to adjourn? Remind me.
No, I don't believe so, Randy. You can just adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Good to see you all. Appreciate you spending first after Monday with us. And have a great day. This meeting is adjourned. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you, and take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks,
As
Naila. Good
always.
seeing you.
Good seeing you too.
Yeah, all as well.
Bye.
Bye.